All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking real music in real time for a few real people out there just like you and just like me. So, Paul McCartney played Fenway Park about a week ago, and I checked out a review of the show, and it's very interesting. And we're in this kind of weird place where apparently reviewers feel as though they need to provide history and context, and they need to make their reviews like prose, and beautiful words. And look, I enjoy some really good adjectives. I do agree that the English language has become more compressed, and certain words are used way too much, especially the four-letter kind, right? They've become adjectives as time has gone on, right? But Paul McCartney at Fenway Park, 2 shows. This is pretty historic. So tell us about the show, Mr. Reviewer. Okay, Paul McCartney may be feeling nostalgic, if not sentimental. Okay, he turns 80 on June 18th. It's okay. You can put this in there. It's kind of a big deal, right? And despite his revered musical acumen, there's a good word, that helped raise and push the second wave of rock and roll to become a lasting and liberated art form until about 30 years ago, rather than a culture shock blip fueled by teenage fantasy, too often overlooked in today's rearview is McCartney's sheer prowess for performance. Okay, so he's a great performer. Simply put, the guy knew and still knows what the fans want. All right, sure. So the aptly named Got Back Tour should have been called Baby's Got Back Tour. That would have been, it would have been like Sir Mix-a-Lot opening up for Sir Paul McCartney. See, I got great ideas, right? I like old Beatles and I cannot lie, right? That's it. Anyway, 2 dates at Fenway Park, the Got Back Tour. Beatle buzz is common anytime McCartney and Ringo Starr hit the road. Okay, so we're still talking about stuff that has nothing to do with the show. We're talking about the Get Back documentary, which we have to talk about because this is what really led to this current tour. Get Back, Got Back, the Peter Jackson directed film, released on my least favorite platform, Disney Plus, late last year. I did order Disney Plus just so I could watch the documentary, and then immediately canceled my subscription once I had watched. I think I watched the documentary one time all the way through, and then I started skimming back through it again. I wanted to get my money's worth since, I don't know, it was like $15 to get Disney Plus. Anyway, we find out at Fenway on Tuesday night that Paul McCartney rolled through a 36-song career-spanning set, bookended with Beatles classics. Okay, it was a musical mosaic. All right, we're still into these interesting terms, laced with plenty of his distorted treble shouts and punctuated with his tactful yahs. That's Y-E-A-H-S. For those of you in Boston who know the history of Fenway Park, it's not yahs like Carl Yastrzemski. Okay, just wanted to clarify there, because his tactful yahs could have been an homage to the late, great Carl Yastrzemski, who was a fan favorite in Boston for decades. Anyway, when the band cracked open Let Me Roll It, not Let Me Roll With It, but just Let Me Roll It, which is a great song from Band on the Run, McCartney strapped on a Les Paul, okay? Because he was playing that cutting guitar riff as if to prove he's no octogenarian. All right. How did this song sound, Mr. Reviewer? And bolstered by his longtime and formidable backing band, McCartney can still hit those Everly Brothers seasoned harmonies ever present in his catalog. Okay, that's a bit of a weird sentence here, a little bit lazy. So his backing band, I'm assuming the backing band does most of the harmonies while Paul is singing. Now, if there are moments where there are no lead vocals present, I'm assuming maybe McCartney can join in on those seasoned harmonies that this person is speaking of here, but he ought to give credit to the backing band and not McCartney. Just throwing it out there. All right. When a sign by a fan wishing him an early 80th birthday, we're still not talking about the show, caught his eye, he quipped, "Who's that?" Indeed, McCartney's current, we're back to the set list, stacked with a handful of more recent works, including For You, which is probably one of Paul McCartney's weakest songs ever, and other tracks, which they don't mention here, but they're talking about Egypt Station. There were actually better songs from that album, and I probably would have encouraged Paul to maybe try a different song. He's well aware, though, of what the audience thinks. So again, we're still not talking about the show itself. We're talking about what the audience thinks about Paul McCartney putting new songs into the set list. Of course, they hate it, right? We can tell what songs you like, he told the crowd late into his set, which ran just over 2.5 hours long. When Beatles hits fired through the speakers, out came a sea of cell phones from the audience. He likened it to the view of a galaxy of stars. When newer songs came out, though, there was a black hole, he said. But we don't care, he continued. We'll do them anyway. So good for him. He's playing songs that people don't want to hear. I like it. But we still don't know how well he's playing those songs. It's hard to shake a feeling that McCartney, now late in life, is more acutely aware of his career's glorious arc. Oh, man. An undeniable living legend, McCartney has likely had to reckon with his public perception as an untouchable artist, the likes of a modern Beethoven. Okay, we're still not talking about the show. In that little port, there were these 4 guys who got together, formed a band, and ended up doing quite well for themselves, McCartney told the crowd Tuesday. All right, so now they're just stenographers here for what Paul McCartney was saying to the crowd. Next month, again, we're still not talking about the show, the 65th anniversary of when a 15-year-old Paul McCartney met John Lennon, joining the latter's folksy, thorny, and completely homespun musical group. How is it thorny? It's a kind of a... See, when I really analyze folksy, thorny, why is it thorny? Anyway, they're talking about the Quarrymen. And again, more education. We've got to educate the audience. We can't tell them what this was like. I'm just going to skip down. McCartney talking about scraping money together to cut their first single. Okay, with a Martin acoustic, McCartney brought back his boyhood as he played that original track that he had written with George Harrison, the one that he had to scrape the money together for, the tune In Spite of All Danger. Is an Elvis heavy adolescent plea to take on life's toughest challenges. Anything you want me to do for the sake of relationship. Okay. McCartney's Mighty Backup Band. Okay, so they like the Mighty Backup Band. They like it. Joined him downstage, is that like downriver, for the toned down performance of the song. Behind them stood a backdrop of a tin roof shack. Could be the B-52s inside there. Plucked out of the 1950s Southern America, suggesting a juke, joint, or front porch affair. Okay, we're still not talking about the show. He is telling us what skiffle is. That's what the Brits called it. At other times, McCartney's standing in Beatle boots. Okay, now he's in the Beatle boots. Told stories about landing the group's first... here's the thing. As much as I wouldn't mind hearing Paul McCartney tell a story, I'm there to hear music. His late bandmates got nods with a ukulele-led cover of Harrison's Something and a rendition of Here Today, the letter in song McCartney wrote to Lennon, after the latter was killed in 1980. Had something here, just kind of stuck in there. So I'm just going to keep going. Offering some advice, McCartney told the audience to never pass up a moment to tell someone you love them. When he rapped Maybe I'm Amazed from McCartney, his first solo venture in 1970, McCartney pointed out an image of him and his then infant daughter, Mary, that flashed above him on a giant monitor. Mary, he said, now has 4 kids of her own. How time flies. Okay. So we know the last song was Maybe I'm Amazed. Living a lifetime in showbiz, McCartney is beginning to finally look a bit more his age after all. Okay, so Paul McCartney is starting to look a bit like his age. His eyes are a bit more tired, though in year 3 of the Thing-demic, can you believe they're going to bring the Thing-demic into this? And they're basically, we're in year 3. No, you're in year 3. I'm not in year 3. He's embraced his grays more in recent years. Okay, so now they're talking about his hair. He wears them well, and they're still a bit moppy. In the breeze at Fenway, it's hard not to conjure a squint and you may see it vision of the much younger man who stood in the January chilly air on a London rooftop all those winters ago. Okay, so the Jackson film this past year, songs like Get Back have a renewed flair and remain dumbfoundedly accessible across the generations assembled in McCartney's audience, and a late set run of Beatles hits, You Never Give Me Your Money, Let It Be, cranked up an electric jolt needed for the rather sleepy midweek crowd that welcomed McCartney back to Boston on Tuesday. Notably, however, signs spelling out "We love you, Paul" wrapped the grandstand earlier in the night, causing the rocker to stop to drink it all in for himself. All right, abundantly clear is that the beating heart of McCartney's career will forever be that storied collaboration with Lennon. Wow, I didn't know that. That is breaking news. And by the way, we're still in the history lesson. We went from the signs to the history of McCartney and Lennon, or Lennon and McCartney, as we should say, like the quintessential core of the Get Back sessions intended to capture the band in a rootsier, less glammed out version. It's clear McCartney is not interested in myth making, but rather something more pure. Okay, we're still not talking about anything. His encore opener plays it straight, using isolated vocals and video from the rooftop concert by Jackson. McCartney duets, and this is a kind of definitely a cool thing, virtually at least, with Lennon for the first time in decades on Let It Be's I've Got a Feeling, with Lennon's line, everybody had a hard year, ringing a bit more true during this Thing-demic. Oh my gosh. So in Boston, by the way, they're still full speed ahead with all of the propaganda about this. So when a writer in Boston is talking about anything, they have to reference the Thing-demic. They have to. I mean, it was an easy, any song that has this line in it, everybody had a hard year. How about we've had 3 hard years in some places, right? That's beautiful for me, McCartney said, summing it up afterwards. Together again. Perhaps even more fitting is McCartney's full-throated bridge. Okay, so we got a description of McCartney's vocal here on this one song. All these years, I've been wandering around. I'm not going to read all the lyrics, but basically, they're saying that his bridge was full-throated. For a few minutes later, together, the 2 boys from Liverpool sang across the ages, one on a high screen above and immortalized in long-haired youth, uncertain where the wild ride would take them all next. Below him stood McCartney, wearing all the life Lennon never got to embrace, but still left pondering about 5-pound recording sessions, a high school band, and the music he made with his friend. All these years indeed. And that's the end of it. So what did we learn? Well, we learned that there was a full-throated bridge, that McCartney's band was amazing or really good, and they did harmonies a lot like the Everly Brothers. And McCartney did it without singing, which I think is pretty amazing. I think it was his band they might be referring to, or maybe when they weren't singing lead together, they were all just singing harmonies to no lead vocals. I'm not sure. But there is nothing about Paul McCartney's voice. Was it strong? Was it a little warbly, which, I've said in the past that Paul is having some difficulty singing, and people have said to me, you're understating the problem. He's out there doing 2.5. Look, here's the thing about that, though. 2.5-hour show, right? He's got too much music. He disappoints a lot of fans that enjoy his solo material, songs that he doesn't touch, things that would be really good as surprises. Instead of this "Fa You" thing, he should be doing, I don't know, "Take It Away," for an example. That would be a great song that we haven't heard in a billion years. Why don't you play that? Not a hard song to sing either. And it would delight hardcore fans. The problem with all of this, and the article is geared toward these casual fans, is that everybody needs a history lesson and context, and nobody knows what happened in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s and up until now. Nobody really knows. So we have to have the reviewer do the education. How about the guitar solo during "Maybe I'm Amazed" was excellent. We didn't hear anything about the individuals in this band. We did hear collectively that the band was really good, but we didn't get names, right? You didn't hear that drummer so-and-so was solid throughout the night and played very well. We didn't hear that Paul McCartney, despite his age, is still a formidable lead vocalist, right? We didn't hear that because, quite honestly, I don't think that's true. But you heard a lot of history, a lot of nostalgia, a lot of flowery language, not changing the subject, but just, again, it was a well-written article, but it didn't really say a whole lot about the show itself. After reading this, I don't know if I'd go see Paul McCartney. I don't know, because nobody told me how good or bad the show was. It was more of an experience, and it's being described as an experience, and it's augmented with the history lesson that goes into this, as he said, mosaic. It's a mosaic. The whole thing's a mosaic. I don't know. I think they should just be honest about, how does he sound? We'll avoid it. We want Paul to get good press. We like Paul. Okay, that's fine. But, you've got back-to-back shows at Fenway Park. You could say that Paul McCartney lost his voice, but he's going to be there tonight anyway, and people would probably show up to see it. I get that. But I think honesty here would have been a breath of fresh air. We do know that he was full-throated on one song, right? On the bridge of one song, he was full-throated. So, or maybe the bridge itself is a full-throated portion of the song, and they were just describing that in a very generic, esoteric way. I don't know. But in any event, folks, it's kind of like a Seinfeld review here. It was a review about nothing. It was more about the history of the Beatles, relationships, McCartney's hair looking good for his age, but he is looking his age. His eyes look tired, which on older people is a common thing. It's not unusual. He's 80 years old, right? He's going to be 80 years old in 3 days. So anyway, obviously I wish Paul McCartney the best, but if you didn't see Paul McCartney in his prime, like I would say at least 30 years ago, 20 to 30 years ago, I think he was still hitting on all cylinders, maybe 2008, 2009, in that period of time. But things have changed a bit in the last decade or so for Paul McCartney, vocally speaking. He's got a band that really helps him. In another review of Paul McCartney, the band does do these harmonies, and almost like everybody in the band is taking a lead vocal or making the lead vocal more robust for Paul, which I think is smart, because at this stage, Paul does need some help. And I wonder why that was omitted from the article, unless this gentleman didn't really notice anything. He just wanted to focus on all the Beatle nostalgia and looking back and being all reflective and worrying about the thing in two different places in the article, that we can't just keep that out of an article. Can we just talk about the music? In any event, folks, that's my review of the review. I still don't know if this concert was any good or not. I suppose it was good because it was Paul McCartney and all of this music at Fenway Park. I mean, what could be better other than maybe Carl Yastrzemski hitting a Grand Slam home run? And that's some pretty good yes, if you ask me.